How to change out the regulator on a Bosch alternator attached to a Skoda Fabia 1.9 TDI Mark 1 99 to 2007. If your battery light comes on and then doesn't go out, just here on the dashboard, and poor starting, you might have a regulator problem on your alternator. You can easily check what your regulator is doing with a voltmeter. Just attach it to the battery and start your car. We'll just test the battery stationary. Turn your voltmeter to volts DC. Now that's 12.55 volts, near enough to 12.6 volts, which is okay. You'll also need to take off the little cap on the back of the alternator on the B1 Plus connection. I'll show you why in a bit. And when we turn the engine over, .4 volts. That's okay as well. The charging voltage should be approximately around 14 volts, somewhere between 13.9 and 14.8. Turn the engine off. If it's undercharging or it's fluctuating between charging and not charging, one of the first things to check is the alternator belt to see if it's slipping. Here's the belt, and it looks a little bit worn on the back of it, so I could replace this. Look at the tension, so it's quite tight is this one. That's alright. You should be able to just about turn it 90 degrees to be about the right tension. Best to get a torch down here so you can see on the inside of the belt, see if it's not cracking or anything on the grooves. If it is, it definitely needs replacing. Right, we should test it on the alternator now. Now put your positive lead on the B1 Plus connection on the back of the alternator, and then your negative lead on the alternator body itself. Turn it back on. I'm getting 14.59. And when I move the earth lead to the earth negative on the body, 14.55, and then onto the battery, 14.55. So there's a little bit of voltage loss between the alternator and the battery, but it's not very much, and I'm not worried at all about it. If you've got a larger voltage drop, then you'll only be looking at the connection between the alternator, the fuse and the battery. In fact, all the connections need to be looked at. The connections to the body, the earth to the body, and the connections to the battery. Make sure they're clean without any corrosion, nice and tight. Once we're happy with all the connections are okay, and the belt tension's okay, but we've still got charging issues, we can look to taking off the regulator and inspecting that. First we need to take the earth lead off the battery and the positive lead off the battery. Now you might find the easiest way to take the regulator off is to take the alternator off the car to start with, but you can do it without taking the alternator out of the car, which is the method I'm going to show you now. This is the regulator at the top and the rectifier cover at the bottom. Take the electrical connection off the top. You just pull back on the little clip and it'll release. It's a 2-wire connection. Then you want to undo and take off the 30mm hex nut on the B1 Plus terminal and the 8mm nut off the cable holder at the bottom, which is what I'm going to take off first actually. If anything looks a bit corroded, then you'll put some penetrating fluid on it. When you're taking the nut off, be very careful not to drop it down into the engine, otherwise you'll have to retrieve it from the bottom. 8mm flange head. Take the little bracket off. Now the 13mm on the B1 positive post. I'm using a 1/4 inch wrench and socket set. Bend the cable out of the way a bit. Then take off the 15mm nut on the B2 positive post. And right at the bottom of the rectifier cover we've got a Phillips headed machine screw we need to undo and take out. It's not easy to see, it's recessed into the sort of plastic. Here it is, just undo that and take that out. Now we go back to the B1 positive post and take a further 13mm nut off. Make sure you put all the screws and nuts on one side and you know where they go when you put them back. Label them if you need to do. They are different sizes. Once you've got that nut off, you should be able to take off the rectifier cover. You just need to sort of jiggle it out a little bit. Try not to break anything or the cover. There we go. It's all marked up with the B positive posts. Now we can access the remaining Phillips headed screws on the regulator. This one on this side is connecting the rectifier, I believe, which is a little short screw. And the two remaining screws are the same length. Then it should just detach. Here's the regulator. It says 14 volts on it. This isn't an OEM one, it's already been replaced once, so I doubt that number relates to anything. Importantly on mine, the brushes have got a decent length, which is something to look out for. If they were less than 5mm long, then you need to replace it. While the regulator's off and the brushes are out, you can see the slip rings, which on mine are in good condition, as I renewed them a few years ago. If you find yours has got deep tram tracks in them, or deep bobsleigh ruts, then you could think about replacing those as well. Which can be done, but it's a bit more of an involved job. But nevertheless, way cheaper than buying a new alternator. Here's all these screws and nuts lined up on top of my scuttle panel. Right, a well-deserved cup of tea, I think, before I put it all back together. Just gently refit the new regulator by putting the brushes back in first. Hold it in place and then put the machine screws back in. Before tightening them up. Then slip the rectifier cover back in place. Don't force it. Refit the screw. And put all the nuts back on. making sure everything's nice and tight. And finally put the electrical connection on, of course, until it clicks. And don't forget the little plastic B-post cap. And the job's done. Oh, you just need to reconnect the battery as well. And then you should be up and running again. Job's a good one. And as always, thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.